Starting with Dr. Ishrat Hussain, how do you view the interaction between China's economy with the rest of the world, especially Pakistan? Because we have had this interaction with China over the last several decades, and especially in the last 10 years, we have seen this trademark project of the Belt and Road Initiative, CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. And despite the demonization by the West about China, let's see what the experience of Pakistan has been as a key member of the Global South with China on the economic issues.
Thank you very much, Mushahid. It's a pleasure to join this very distinguished forum. China took quite a few decades in order to reach a situation where they became the world's second largest economy and the world's largest exporting nation. And this is unparalleled in human history, that a country which 1980 had $100 per capita income was able to reach $12,500 in almost 3 decades. This is not something which any historian of economic development would able to find a parallel. It took United States 100 years to reach that situation. It took Japan 50 years, it took Korea most than 40 years, but United States record, China's record are very different track. Having attained that position, China felt that it is also very much responsible to help the developing countries of the world. And I can tell you from my own experience, having worked on China as the chief economist for World Bank and chief economist for Africa, I can make the contrast. The World Bank, the Western powers were always coming in with their own projects, which they felt made sense for those countries.
So they were telling the countries what
that
to do.
is what you should borrow for. And these were loans, these were not grants. Of course, the Scandinavian countries, Netherlands and Canada were very generous as far as the grants were concerned, but the rest of the Western world gave them the loans. And they took a lot of time in order to complete these projects and negotiate these projects. China, on the other hand, went to these countries and said, what is your priority needs for economic growth and development? And they responded to the local needs and demands and did not impose any of their own priors or of their own discretionary powers. And they said, this is what you want. You want a railway line, you want a highway, you want a sports stadium, whatever you need, we will cater to that. And that is a major difference as far as the popularity of China in Africa and other South Asia.
So the choice is given to the recipient countries, not imposed by Washington
outside.
DC. That is a very important
important point, and people don't realize that.
That's, I think, a very key element.
As you said, in demonizing China, the popular myth in the West is that China is creating debt trap for these developing countries. Yes. The facts are quite contrary to that.
In fact, I was recently reading an article in the Atlantic, which is published in Washington, D.C. by 2 American professors, Harvard and Yale, and they wrote an article, The Myth of the Chinese Debt Trap. So, you know, even they are focusing on, I think, let's learn from the Chinese famous dictum.
I wrote this 5 years.
Seek truth from facts.
I wrote this 5 years ago, and then I was at Atlantic Council in Washington, where there was a webinar. And some of my Indian friends, you know, phoned me back and said, Ishrat, we didn't know all these facts which you have disclosed about the Chinese assistance to the developing countries, and also particularly CPEC.
Thank you. And I think we'll move to Sudheen Kulkarni Saab in Delhi, taking on from Dr. Ishrat Hussain's And I think it's based on the famous Chinese dictum, popularly claimed, seek truth from facts. You have been visiting China frequently, and you've been focusing on agriculture, on poverty alleviation, and the world, the way it presents, especially the Western media, China's economic growth, and say there's a slowdown, there's a problem, there's a imminent crisis coming up. What are the facts on that based on your recent research and visits, Mr. Kulkarni?
First of all, I want to congratulate you on starting this new program, Voice of the Global South. It is most timely because the Global South accounts for the majority of the global population. But the media and the voice of the Global South still does not match the influence of the West. We are all aware that the West accounts only for 15% of the global population, but it dominates the media, it dominates the intellectual discourse in a disproportionate way. And which is why all the media voices of the developing countries, China, India, Pakistan, Africa, Latin America, other countries in Asia, we all should strengthen our media voices both separately and collectively so that we end the domination of the West in setting the debate for global development, global future. Now, coming to your question, Mushahid Saab, China has shown that it can grow very fast and at the same time solve critical issues, problems inherited from the past. And I especially refer to its success in eliminating extreme poverty. Today, there is no extreme poverty at all in China. 800 million people lifted out of poverty in 4 decades is yet another feat unparalleled by any other country in history. So other countries in Global South, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, all of us included, we have a lot of lessons to learn from China in the way it has eliminated poverty and improved the living conditions of people, not only in urban areas, but also in rural areas. In recent months, I've been fortunate to travel extensively in rural China, and I've seen for myself China's success in rural revitalization, in rural industrialization. So, on the one hand, as has been pointed out, China is marching forward in high-tech areas, electric vehicles, semiconductors, robotics, artificial intelligence, etc. But at the same time, it is also taking care of the basic needs of its vast masses. So, therefore, China is in many ways a model for the rest of the Global South.